Last year you started out saying the policy was suppression and that we had to live with the virus and ensure we had enough ICU beds, that we were flattening the curve. And now you've supported the Adelaide, Brisbane and Perth lockdowns despite hardly any cases in those jurisdictions. Have you given in to the view of the vast amount of Australians they want 0 cases of coronavirus, none at all? Are you pursuing eradication now? And would you therefore consider, given we're looking at a whole bunch of short, sharp lockdowns now, some sort of program like JobKeeper where when the government shuts down economies, it helps fund business for that?
Well, the answer to your first question is no, my view hasn't changed. And right from the outset of this pandemic, it had always been my view that localised lockdowns were a good way to suppress the virus and its spread through metropolitan areas. And Professor Murphy will remember that very, very well. We spoke about it a lot. And I think what you saw in the northern beaches of Sydney was a good example of that approach and how effective that approach can be. One of the things you learn as you go through a pandemic like this is you don't get to set the rules. The pandemic tends to write those, and you need to work and adapt to the things as they change. And I've heard this, there's only one case. It's not just one case. It's a case of a more virulent strain of which we know little about. And so I would caution an equivalence with earlier strains and the responses there. The other thing I think we've learnt is, I'm sure Victorians would agree with me, no one wants to go into a 4-month lockdown again. And by giving our contract tracers our weekends head start, which is effectively what those things were, then that has avoided something far more significant. All of these are judgments that you make at the time based on the evidence you have with the health officers in the room, but ultimately premiers, chief ministers, prime ministers, health ministers have got to make calls on these things, and we will seek to make the best calls that we possibly can. You know that I've been very respectful of the Federation, and I am respectful of the Federation. I'm a federalist at heart. And what that means is, sure, states can make decisions about what they intend to do in areas of their responsibilities, but they then are also responsible for also dealing and mitigating the impacts of those decisions that they make. It's not a blank cheque. And when it comes to what level of government has stepped up and backed in the Australian economy, small businesses, medium-sized businesses, those working right across this country, employees, and those who've lost their job, there has never been a government at a federal level that has provided more support than this one. So I'd say the federal government has done its fair share of the heavy lifting here, and we will continue to, as my presentations set out today. And JobKeeper is one of many, many initiatives that we're doing to support and sustain the Australian economy, but it changes over time. Now, you don't rent your economy, you actually grow your economy, and that's what we're doing, and the states have an important role to play in that. But I would agree that greater certainty and about how these rules are put in place, and I've urged the premiers on this front, they need to keep that in mind as they put these things in place. But suppression is our strategy, hasn't changed, not a day.